With Mr. Gregory, Denis, Chief Executive Officer of Digicel Guyana. First of all, Mr. Dean, a recap of what has been 2022 like for your company so far.
Denis?
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, go again, Denis, sir.
Yes. First of all, I'm asking, could you recap for me what 2022 has been like for your company?
Well, as you're aware, Denis, in late, I would say 2020, we had liberalization of the sector. So a lot of the work we've been doing this year has been, one, in terms of improvements of service in terms of mobile. So that specifically was around expanding our LTE coverage. As you know, we begun around 86% LTE coverage in the market, and we were trying to get to 96%. So you find a lot of the remote areas we now have LTE coverage. I think the one we're most proud of, obviously, is LATAM. I mean, I suppose that's been it's been a bugbear for us for many a year in terms of how do we get real quality service into LATAM, and I think we're happy to finally launch LTE service, which we believe is making a big difference to the persons in LATAM. And also, we made a lot of improvements in the Rupununi area in general. Also, some of our very remote sites that are on satellite, we were able to make improvements, both in terms of, obviously, power has been a challenge with us, so we were able to do some solar expansions in those locations, and also add additional bandwidth to improve the service in those locations. Places like Etteringbang, Charlton, in Bamadai, and some of those locations, we've been able to make improvements too. Besides that, we've also made, obviously, an expansion into new service areas. So we are rolling out.
Interview with Mr. Gregory, the Chief Executive Officer of Digicel Guyana. First of all, Mr. Dean, a recap of what has been 2022 like for your company so far.
Denis?
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, go again, Denis, sir.
Yes. First of all, I'm asking, could you recap for me what 2022 has been like for your company?
Well, as you're aware, Denis, in late, I would say 2020, we had liberalization of the sector. So a lot of the work we've been doing this year has been, one, in terms of improvements of service in terms of mobile. So that specifically was around expanding our LTE coverage. As you know, we begun around 86% LTE coverage in the market, and we were trying to get to 96%. So you find a lot of the remote areas we now have LTE coverage. I think the one we're most proud of, obviously, is LATAM. I mean, I suppose that's been it's been a bugbear for us for many a year in terms of how do we get real quality service into LATAM, and I think we were happy to finally launch LTE service, which we believe is making a big difference to the persons in LATAM. And also, we made a lot of improvements in the Rupununi area in general. Also, some of our very remote sites that are on satellite, we were able to make improvements, both in terms of, obviously, power has been a challenge with us, so we were able to do some solar expansions in those locations, and also add additional bandwidth to improve the service in those locations. Places like Etteringbang, Charlton, in Bamadai, and some of those locations, we've been able to make improvements too. Besides that, we've also made, obviously, an expansion into new service areas. So we are rolling out fiber currently. At the moment, we're predominantly, in the central Georgetown area, but that expansion is ongoing. And we expect to continue rolling out in the next few months. And we've been adding customers as we increase the footprint. We've been adding customers in that footprint as well. So our ambition was always to be a full service provider, and I think we can safely say now we're a full service provider. We have, we've entered, if you like, the fixed and the home internet market, so to speak. The major project for us is ongoing, which is the subsea fiber. As you know, we are planning to bring a subsea fiber from, well, it originates in Trinidad with a stop in Tobago, then on to Guyana, Suriname, and then French Guyana. And currently that project is still on track. We're still expecting that project to be here early 2024. So work on that is ongoing as well. So we have a lot of major projects on the go at the moment. I think the biggest two obviously are, the subsea project and the in-country fiber project. And in mobile, we're still making improvements to some locations. We are doing some partnerships as well in terms of going to new locations, especially some of the mining companies that are asking us for services, and we're doing some partnership agreements with them to expand coverage in those locations as well, which serves the mining camps, but they also serve, citizens who live around those areas as well. So for us, it's an ongoing process. I think we're over 98% population coverage, but we expect to see, smaller increments now because a lot of the areas that are unserved now have a lower population, but that process is ongoing, and we're looking at some other areas as well in terms of the Prime Minister's asked us to look at a few unserved areas. So those projects are ongoing.
Mr. Dean, even as you roll out your fiber connectivity from Trinidad right down to French Guyana and so on, how are you managing to provide improved service in the absence of that fiber link coming across the Guyanas?
Well, currently we do have capacity we're procuring from Suriname, or via Suriname, I should say. We have a link going via Suriname up to Trinidad. I mean, it's a combination of fiber, and we also have microwave as well. And we also procure some capacity in country as well from GT&T at the moment.
And how will your new fiber connectivity, when that lands here, assist you in further improving your service or providing even other types of services?
Well, for us, we expect the big expansion obviously is going to be the fiber services. So we expect to see the demand from a fiber point of view to continue growing. I think the needs of an individual fiber customer is probably more than a mobile customer. So as we add more fiber customers to our network, we expect to see that demand increase. We're also obviously trying to get a lot more business solution customers. So those are customers who may come to us and they have a specific package that they want us to design for them, or a tailor-made package. And, the government has plans, if you like, to push call centers and those type of ICT establishments who are data hungry. So we expect to also play a part in that. And obviously, look, with the mobile as well, customers, their demand will continue to grow. I mean, when we started, I suppose the initial demand was, emails and I would say less data hungry services. Then we moved on to Facebook, and we thought, well, Facebook would be, the thing people would hang on to for years. But I think now you see with especially a lot of the younger users, things like TikTok, which are very, a lot of videos, etc. So we expect to see those demands grow. I mean, I don't know what's going to be the next big thing after TikTok, but surely there will be something coming along, in the future as well. So we expect in all the areas we serve, whether it's fixed or mobile, business solutions, we expect to see demand growing.
Since the liberalization process to date, what has been your level of dollar investment?
I think around for the LTE service, we've invested around $5 billion. I would say probably another $2 to $3 billion on the fixed services. And I think on the outer country bandwidth, look, that's an ongoing project as we get into the manufacturing of fiber, etc. It will become clearer, but I would say it will be probably going to be our biggest single investment in Guyana. So I'd expect it to even be higher than, what we've invested in LTE.
When do you expect that fiber cable to land here in Guyana?
early 2024.
And in terms of all of the subsea, not the subsea, the various surveys and so on offshore, have that been completed?
Yes, we've completed all the offshore surveys and everything have been completed for Guyana. All the permits or permissions are in place as well. So it's more a function of, if you like, us waiting the queue for our fiber to be manufactured. Unfortunately, I suppose from a subsea world, there's a huge demand from a lot of players out there. While we might think we're a big player, if you like, in the Caribbean region, I suppose on the world stage, there were a lot of other major operators in the queue. But we're hoping to have that come, if we can push to get it even sooner than early 2024, that's what we'll do. But at the moment, that's the current schedule date.
And what will be your redundancy option? I know you wouldn't necessarily want to depend on your brand new fiber or even any fiber at all. What's your redundancy plan?
Well, essentially, you remember the fiber is going to come down south from Tobago to Guyana. And then we will go east to Suriname and French Guyana. Our sister operation in French Guyana does have capacity as well. So I think potentially, or more than likely, we would also have some redundancy going that route. So we would have, I suppose, primarily the Tobago to Guyana route, but then we also have the Guyana to Suriname, Suriname to French Guyana, and I suppose French Guyana then also has another route where they go back up to Martinique and St. Lucia. So we would have redundancy through that route. And also we do have plans or permissions in place also to have another route, a land-based route going to Suriname.
I know over the last few months, I've seen Digicel workers or perhaps contracted workers running fiber cable in many parts of Georgetown, and you did allude to part of this being done, especially in the city. What's your uptake been like since you started offering this service?
Well, in our initial or the first phase, we predominantly focusing on business customers, as FTTB is just fiber to the business. I think we've had a good response so far. Obviously, it's new to us, so a lot of that is just making sure we have the correct systems in place, making sure. So as we expand, we would have that experience to take with us. And yet, look, we have other operations in the Digicel group who have obviously launched these types of services, so we were able to pull on their experiences. But I suppose there's nothing until you do it yourself. So I think for us, it's been a learning experience, and we've been developing the processes or the back office processes as we go along. But so far, I would say it's been very good for us, and it's in line with our expectation.
Are we likely to see an increase in the number of jobs? I know for companies such as yours, a lot of the jobs are outsourced to one central center and so on. But in context of your expansion projects and so on, what about a generation of jobs for Guyanese here?
Well, while we're outsourcing some of the jobs that go with the fiber business, I mean, they are going to be local jobs with those companies as well. It's just a case of, I suppose, similar to how we manage the stores. There are probably 200 staff in the store, in the retail population, that are not directly Digicel staff per se, but I think we expect to have this similar thing. Our current thinking is that, if you like, internally, we would focus more on the sales point of view, and we would outsource, a lot of those other services. But we expect those jobs to fall to Guyanese. Obviously, being local, the companies are local companies, and they will have local employees as well. But as to what, in the end, is that, our direct employees or who are indirect, I mean, some of those things will change as we go along and as we see the experience. I think the reason we went the outsourcing route was more in terms of speed. I think we wanted to bring on persons who had the experience rather than us taken the time to recruit and train them all ourselves. And the company that's come on board, I mean, they've partnered with us in other markets, so they knew how we operate and what was required. And they will take on the responsibility of training persons and getting them up to speed. So it's going to be a transition process where they train and get locals involved in doing the work going forward.
You talk about FTB or fiber to business. What about fiber to home? Have you begun offering that service yet in any part of Guyana?
No, I mean, in the rollout phase, our main focus is on fiber to the business at the moment. But I mean, look, our plan is to, if you like, in the second phase to move to fiber to the home. But I suspect events are probably overtaking us and we're probably getting fiber to the home customers as well. So, you know, look, if we pass your location and people are asking for the service, I mean, we're not denying them.
Going back to LTE and all of that you've been doing here on the coastline as well as in the interior, how have you been faring with respect to your request for additional spectrum from the National Telecommunications Agency?
I mean, at the moment, look, we for broadly, I think in terms of our requests, we've been getting the spectrum required. As I said, look, we've been able to expand LTE service across the country, but there are still discussions ongoing, and I think it will be a live process because as you know, the operators roll out, they'll be asking for more and more spectrum in different bands. They may be trade-offs where, for instance, you may say, well, I use less of this spectrum, but I want a bit more of something else. So that will be an ongoing process, Dennis. I don't see us getting to a point where we suddenly say, well, we don't need any more spectrum again. I think because as technology changes and there are new advancements. So I think that will be an ongoing discussion between the operators and the regulators and the government, because the minister obviously is ultimately responsible for assigning spectrum. So I expect that to be ongoing because, as I said, you know, customers' demands are changing. You know, where we thought, you know, for instance, when we launched some of these remote sites by satellite, like Letem and some of these other areas, you know, the main demand was voice. And, you know, we deployed those services and we thought, okay, you know, that will be it. But, you know, people's demands have changed. People want, you know, they started using a bit of data and that keeps growing. And, you know, some of the predictions are in the coming years, you know, usage will quadruple, etc. So, you know, that will be an ongoing conversation, both in terms of us in
You're frozen.
investing in new. So I don't think they are for the next 5-10 years. I think that changes almost every year.
Would you say though that your concern about not being given the required spectrum is as bad as it was, say, about say 5 years ago, where you actually had billboards up really voicing concern about the absence of the spectrum?
Look, I think our primary concern, as it was 5 years ago, was liberalization. I think we're happy that it took, you know, liberalization has taken place. I mean, prior to liberalization, I wouldn't have been able to speak to you about landing a subsea fiber, about providing fixed services. But I suppose your job is never done. I mean, you close one door and another door opens. So I think because of the demand of customers and the evolution of technology, we will always demand, you know, whether it's spectrum, whether, you know, there might be various things from time to time that we require because of the dynamic nature of the business. So we're happy with liberalization, but I think there will always be a situation where operators are knocking on the door of regulators asking for, you know, more permissions or spectrum.
Mr. Dean, earlier you hinted about provision of services to the unserved areas. By and large, those areas are low population density, and historically, not only operators in Guyana, but in other parts of the world have said, it's really not profitable to serve those areas. What's the plan, though, to ensure that you can serve those areas and at least still make some money?
Well, we are looking at there are some new technologies available in terms of reducing the cost for things like civil works for tower construction, etc. So we are going to be trialing, I think, early next year, some of that technology in terms of it's low cost, it's using different ways of, if you like, connecting between the towers. So, obviously your first choice of connecting between towers is fiber, the second choice might be microwave. But now there's some technology where you can actually link between towers using the actual, LTE spectrum. So that reduces your cost. Well, it reduces the power you would need to utilize at the tower, because the two issues we have in Guyana, in addition to the population, as you mentioned, the main one is power. So, you have to deploy solar, and if you're catering for 3 to 4 days without sunshine, then your cost for that solar deployment goes up. So if we can get around the issue of the power consumption at the location, I think that would help a lot. So we are going to be trialing new technologies as well. Obviously, the bigger issue in Guyana is also the topography, because, as you go into the interior, it's not flat. So establishing line of sight and connectivity between sites becomes an issue. And I think one of the concerns we have is that satellite backhaul, or using satellite to connect back to our central base here in Georgetown, is not, for us, it's not giving the customers optimum data service that they require. So I think that is the biggest challenge. But I mean, every day you read about new developments, if you like, in the satellite technology world as well. So I think as the technology advances in these various, whether it's from solar technology, satellite technology, as those advance, I think more and more you would find solutions that would be more suited for these smaller communities. And I think the Prime Minister's office as well, they are doing ICT hubs in some of those smaller communities. So it may be ICT hub is the way to go for the future. But ideally, every citizen would want to be mobile and have their service wherever they are, rather than having to go to an ICT hub. So I expect over the coming years with developments, I think with the various developments from the equipment suppliers, because I think, a lot of the countries, whether it's Africa and some of these other markets, are demanding these type of technologies. So we're hoping that we'll be able to also take advantage of those.
Mr. Dean, we're seeing at least 3 major telecoms providers now in the market: yourself, GT&T, and eNetworks. I know we have a smaller provider that's offering some degree of service in smaller areas. When you look at a market, does it have the potential to grow, or is this just a matter of stiff competition and trying to stay in the marketplace come what may?
I suppose when you talk about maturity and the growth, I suppose it depends on where you are. I think from a mobile point of view, we may say that the market has a certain level of maturity. But I suppose if you're in eNetwork shoes, you would say, well, you see growth on the horizon. Similarly for us, from a fixed point of view, it's not an area we've been involved in. So for us, it's an area of growth where GT&T may say, look, this is mature for us. But at the same time, GT&T is rolling out. So I think a lot of times when you talk about growth or maturity, it depends on where you're starting. So for us, we do see growth in the market, but obviously we believe a lot of that growth for us is going to come from the fixed arena. But certainly, look, we're optimistic in terms of the future of the sector. I presume many of the other operators are optimistic as well. If they weren't optimistic in terms of their growth potential, I don't think you would see as many operators coming into the arena. So I mean, down the line, you know, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, where everyone will be, I don't know. I mean, obviously, look, our job is to make sure Digicel is still there as a premier communications provider. And so as everyone else would be coming up with their own strategies and, you know, ideas in terms of how they get to whatever their goals are.
Looking ahead into 2023, Mr. Dean, for Digicel, what can subscribers expect as far as telecoms packages are concerned? I know, say about 8 to 10 years ago, even before liberalization, when you look at what Digicel was doing in other parts of the Caribbean and even cable and wireless, you had a lot of cross-border offers to subscribers that were really low cost and attractive. Can we perhaps in 2023 see some of that, where you offer subscribers packages that they will see benefits if they were to call, say, Antigua, Barbados, or St. Lucia, where there are large pockets of Guyanese?
Well, on both fronts. So on the call from if you're hearing Guyana and making a call, I think we've made significant reduction to the international rates since liberalization. And also, you know, there was an agreement with CARICOM in terms of roaming and the cost for customers to move around the region. And I think we've implemented those lower CARICOM rates as well. As competition develops, I'm sure there might be different ways those will be packaged, but both from customers being in Guyana and calling the rest of CARICOM and also customers roaming in CARICOM, we've made significant reductions in those rates in line with our agreement in terms of the roaming in line agreement to CARICOM. In terms of post-liberalization and the international calling rates, I think we made those changes because that's something I think we always had in mind post-liberalization. But subject to the CARICOM agreement, we've also significantly slashed roaming rates.
Mr. Dean, any other points you would like to make mention of that I did not ask you about as we wrap up this interview?
No, I think we are grateful for, you know, the customers and, you know, the fact that they've been loyal to Digicel over the past year and, you know, past years, I should say, even when we had significant challenges, obviously, because of the monopoly situation in the market. We understand it's a challenge. I mean, customers always want more. I mean, even for Christmas, we have significant, you know, promotions out there, both in terms of pick and win, where customers can select or be in charge of winning, because customers always say, you know, they want to be able to choose be in control of their prize winning. So we've tried to devise a promotion along those lines. We have significant offers in terms of 10 gigs bonus data for customers who would join in. They will enjoy that through the first quarter of next year. And also in terms of even our existing data plans, we've made significant changes to our data plans this month. So customers should see significant increase in their data allowances. And also, as I mentioned, you know, their roaming packages, we have attractive plans that are available for customers with significant reductions for CARICOM, and also we're catering for beyond CARICOM as well. We have attractive packages, people roaming beyond CARICOM. We continue to roll fixed services. Obviously, that's our newest service in the market, and we're continuing to roll out, and we're hoping to meet the needs of our customers from a fixed point of view as well. We're going to be introducing newer services as well as the fixed internet services. So I suppose watch this space. We're going to continue to innovate and try as best as possible to meet the needs of customers.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. We've been talking there with Mr. Gregory Dean, the Chief Executive Officer of Digicel Guyana, about some of his projects and plans that he has in stream and will be coming in stream in the not too distant future. Again, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.